Hi everyone, welcome to my non-spoiler review of the Suicide Squad 2021. This is my third attempt at recording this review because I just keep getting really annoyed, but I'm just going to crack on with this one, and if it's rubbish then it's rubbish, and not many people are going to watch it anyway, so who really cares. Yeah, I saw the movie last night. I braved the cinema in a pandemic, and I've been double vaccinated now and that, and so it was okay. But still, it was a bit of a tough decision. I had to wait a couple of weeks after it came out because, unlike in the Americas, we can't watch it at home here yet because they've got it on the old hbomax, and we don't have that because we are in England. Anyway, it's a new James Gunn movie based off of the comic book series created by John Ostrander way back in the 70s, I believe, if I'm correct. Obviously, there was a 2016 movie called Suicide Squad based off the same thing, but to be perfectly honest, I'm not going to bother comparing the two, which people seem to do, because it's very much just a different take on the same thing. So yeah, it's kind of a reboot, but like not really, but also using some of the same actors playing the same characters because they worked out pretty well. So yeah, I'm not going to bother comparing the two. That's probably the only time I'll mention it. Maybe I will, who knows. But yeah, I think I will say this is a pretty good movie. Like, I thought it was okay for me, and like it didn't quite work for me, but again, that's me. I think for a lot of people will probably really like it because it's a pretty good action movie. Everything, it looks good, it's pretty well put together. There are some bits I like that I'll talk about in a bit, but for me personally it just didn't work. I think that's just because it's not to my particular taste anymore. I've kind of got a bit fed up of like big budget movies. I like smaller movies now, so for me personally, you know, it wasn't really the one. I remember at the start of the film it starts off really well and really stylishly, and it introduces what I really wanted was the really random like DC villains, which it does have. I mean, there's ones in there that I don't even know, and I'm a proper nerd and it's my job to know this stuff, but and the idea being the Suicide Squad's pretty expendable, so there's a lot of characters in there that are there just for that reason, which they made pretty clear in since the beginning of the marketing and talking about it and stuff like that. But I really like the beginning bit because it's just all these random characters, and just like I feel like I would like a really low budget version of this movie. Not low budget, but not, you know, big superhero movie budget, because with that big superhero movie budget I think you have to go into the big in this one, like as I said, if you've seen the trailers then you know this is fair game, but you go into fighting like a big monster or a big villain kind of thing at the end, rather than kind of, I don't know, I just like a smaller scale version of this where it's more about kind of the characters and stuff. Not that this doesn't go into the characters, but it does. But yeah, so I'd say it didn't quite work for me, but that doesn't mean it's bad. I think for most people it'll be quite enjoyable. I would say the main strength of the movie is the cast, because going into it wasn't clear who the main character was going to be, because it's kind of an ensemble cast kind of thing. But I think idriselba's character, Bloodsport, you'd probably call the main character. Margotrobbie gets top billing, but then she's probably the most famous, I would say. Yeah, he was kind of the main driving force of the movie, and he had his own kind of little story, and he was really good because, you know, Idris Elba is really good, but he managed to be that tough guy character, but also, you know, kind of the leader of the group. But he has kind of he has comedy moments without being funny himself. Like, his character is funny in certain situations, and him and Johncena's character Peacemaker, who is another standout. I love John Cena as an actor as well. Like, I think he's great, and he's a fascinating human being to see in a movie, because like, I know him from wrestling, and in wrestling he's around other enormous men, but when you see John Cena around normal people, he is just a ridiculously proportioned and sized man. It's really funny to see him amongst people who are smaller than him. But yeah, they have kind of a rivalry because their characters are quite similar in what they do, in terms of their skill set. So that leads to some good moments. Obviously, Margotrobbie plays Harley Quinn, who I wasn't too fussed about in this really. Like, I think she's kind of there because she's a very popular character, and like, I've no problem with how she plays her, but I've never been too fussed about her in any of these films. I think it is quite fascinating that she's played Harley Quinn in 3 movies now that aren't really related to each other. Like, none of these movies are kind of connected, strictly speaking. Like, they kind of are, but also aren't. Like, it's quite odd, really, that she's played the same character in more or less the same way. I know there's slight differences between films, but yeah, but they're not the same. It's very odd. I don't really know if that's really happened before, But there's a few other people, like I say, who have played these characters before. I really like Viola Davis in this because she was Amanda Waller again, and the Amanda Waller character is great because she's just that like tough, no nonsense kind of bureaucratic leader who just doesn't care. She's just there to do the job, and she doesn't care who gets hurt, who gets killed, or anything, as long as the job gets done. And she's perfect in this. Like she's not really a character as such, in the sense that she's not a big part of the main story. She's just kind of facilitating, which is what Amanda Waller should be, really. And she was great, really good. But she's Viola Davis. She's great anyway. But some of the other members of the main sort of squad are some really obscure DC characters like Polka Dot Man, who's dealt with brilliantly. Like Polka Dot Man is one of those ridiculous sort of Batman villains, I think, that kind of popped up in sort of the 50s maybe, where they were just like, they all had really weird like gimmicks. This was before, well, kind of during a period when Batman wasn't the Dark Knight. He was just kind of what you'd more associate the 1960s TV show with, and they just kind of bring up all these weird villains that later they reinvented as kind of darker characters, and they kind of did that a bit with Polka Dot Man. But he's played by David Dastmalchian, who is fantastic. He's really good in everything I've seen him in, and this was such a great call to have him in and have him cast as the character and play him in this way. I won't go into detail about him, but I really like what they did with him. Also, Daniela Melchior, I think her name's pronounced, plays Ratcatcher too. Who again, Ratcatcher is a really obscure villain, and she's the daughter of the original Ratcatcher in this. And again, I won't go too much into her character because I feel like there's things that are nice to experience. But I really liked her and her whole thing. So they're really good as like the supporting characters and stuff like that. Saying about Harley Quinn, like she has a couple of moments in the film where she goes off and does her own thing, which is fine because again, she's probably the most popular character, and that, you know, she kind of has her own screen time and she's a big deal, and like some of it's good, but like there's a whole bit near the start that goes on for about 5 minutes with her and another character, which just kind of feels not really relevant to anything. And I was just kind of like, oh, that, I think that was the point in the film, because it's probably about half an hour in, maybe a bit more, where it kind of took me out of it a little bit, because I was really into it up to that point, and this was the point where I kind of went, oh, okay, this isn't going to work for me in every respect. But not that I didn't enjoy the film as such, but it was just kind of, I feel like it was missing for me kind of like an emotional hook to it. Like every character had kind of their own stories and their sort of motivations and that, and there were some nice little moments about the characters, but there was no real kind of redemption moment in a sense for anyone. There was no real, again, there was little things like that, but not that really kind of appealed to me in that sense. One of the other characters I wasn't too fussed about was King Shark, or Nanaue as he's called, which is disappointing because I really love King Shark, the character, and he's the big kind of popular thing. It's like, have you seen that movie? It's got a talking shark man, and he's voiced by Sylvester Stallone, which is a good shout, but he just didn't really do anything for me. Like, I didn't find anything he did particularly funny, and you know, he does some cool stuff where he kills people and that, but you know, it's like, I think people are kind of thinking he's kind of the equivalent of like Groot in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, also by James Gunn, but Groot had real character to him. Like Groot, even though he only said 3 words, or 4 technically, but yeah, and it's just not quite the same. I know it's not what they were going for as such, but yeah, there was just nothing about King Shark that really got me. I was just like, okay, you know, he is what he is, which is a shame because he's a good character and I like him. But yeah, so there is another thing about the film, but I won't go into it too much. Like if you've seen the trailer and you know kind of the villain, I guess you'd say, then please carry on watching. If not, then I'll just summarise, it's a good movie, but it wasn't for me. You might enjoy it. There you go. But yeah, Starro the Conqueror is in this film, and the saying again, he was in the trailers, so I think that's fair game. And I love Starro the Conqueror. Like, he's such a weird character. He's a giant starfish that mind controls people with little starfish, and he looked really good. And I like how they did him, and I like how he speaks. Well, actually, no, I won't go into too much detail. But yeah, I'm glad that we got to see him in a big movie, and I prefer him when he's done in a bit more of a creepy way rather than a kind of crazy way. But then for the context of this movie, that worked. So, but yeah, as I've said, my overall thoughts: it's good. It's a good action film. It's funny. It's really well done. I think most people will enjoy it. It's very violent as well, I didn't mention that, but it is R rated, so it's very violent and sweary, but I don't really notice that anymore. It's just kind of, that's fine. But yeah, didn't quite work for me, but you might enjoy it. Let me know your thoughts and I'll read them if I care. Who knows? Thank you very much. Goodbye.